Welcome to Heroes First Podcast, sponsored by Fund the First, the nation's leading verified crowdfunding platform for first responders, military, and medical professionals. And now, your host, broadcasting from Long Island, New York, Robert Garland.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining this episode of Heroes First Podcast. Each show, you will hear from a new guest that portrays excellence in the first responder, military, or medical professional field. If you are an active or retired member of the service, or even a family member or a friend, then this show is for you. Our podcast is also proud partners with the Everyday Heroes Podcast Network and the Law Enforcement Today Podcast Network. I would like to present to you our guest for episode 30 of this podcast series, Brad Thomas. Brad, how are you, sir?
What's going on, man? Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you. You know, Eddie Molina actually introduced us to one another, and I love his introduction. He goes, "The Long Island legend." You know, where do you get that name from?
That's the first I've ever heard it.
Okay,
the first and only time that it's ever been referenced.
Okay, well, Eddie's a great guy. You know, I actually met Eddie through some investment groups and stuff with what we do. But he's an awesome guy, former military as well. Did you guys work together?
No, I don't know how. Oh, he was writing something for, I think, Soft Lead. Okay. And so, or not Soft Lead, Soft Rep. And anyway, got in contact with me through, some people that knew me there. And so we started talking, and, he basically did an interview and then took the interview, transcribed it, and then posted it. And he was like, "Hey man, I love talking to you. And if you want me to connect you with people that I know, I'll do that." So he's like literally been my publicist for a little while, just, introducing me to tons of different folks.
Nah, he's great. He's an awesome guy. And I'm happy that we were able to connect with one another. Oh, and he also did he was a writer for Law Enforcement Today, I think also. I think that's another way that I connected with him.
Yeah.
Law Enforcement Today. Yeah. So you have an incredible background. I love your background. I love hearing about different people, but I want to go into this Mogadishu story. And I know it's probably
about the fact that I'm a Pisces. You don't want to get into that?
I'm a Pisces too. What's your birthday?
Really? February 26th.
Okay, I'm March 20th.
Okay.
I'm not Zodiac person. You're big into Zodiac stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear it. I got to know why.
I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I feel like some of that stuff really kind of correlates, and like anything, you could read into it whatever you want to read into it, so yeah. You can pick the little parts out and say, "Oh, see, this is exactly what it," but anyway, I was just joking with you.
No, I mean, I like that kind of stuff because when you talk to different people, sometimes they bring up, "What's your zodiac sign?" And I'm not one of those people to ever be like, "Oh, whatever." But then when they're like, "Oh, that's why you're a Pisces," okay, it makes sense. And I'm like, what? What does that even mean?
Yeah. Like the only thing I ever knew really about a Pisces was that it's the fish that swims against the current, right? So, I think that's always kind of defined me.
Okay. You have any tattoos?
Yeah, a load of them.
Yeah. Okay. That's one tattoo that I've wanted to get was a fish. Like I'm covered as well, but I wanted to get a fish swimming against the current, like a koi fish or something.
Okay. Yeah. That would be cool.
Yeah. But all right, back to Mogadishu.
Yeah. So jumping right into Mogadishu.
I got, it's such a compelling story. And, the write-up that Eddie gave me about it, like, it's amazing. Like I've been in law enforcement for 13 and a half years. I'm being a detective and knocking down doors in narcotics and doing all that kind of stuff. It's one thing, it's one evil. But what you did, I mean, this is incredible. I really want to hear that story.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a week-long podcast, to go through the whole thing. It's a huge part of who I became as a soldier, because you can't live through something like that and then not have it affect, your outlook and how you prepare for a mission, kind of the seriousness of, figuring out all your contingencies and things that might go wrong and, all of that stuff. So it was definitely a defining moment. I try and when people ask me about it, because it's really too much to kind of get into the battle and like the heat of I did this and then I did this and then there's hours of that, so it would kind of be like an 18-hour long, podcast if we did that. But I try and help people understand what the military was like then and kind of what the flavor of, going into that whole deployment was like at that time. And, most people, because they've just lived, if they're younger people, they've been a part of the September 11th generation, 2001. So all the 20-year-olds and below, they've experienced, we've always been at war. That's just the way that it is. And even for people that are 30 years of age, they were a little kid when that happened. And for most of their adult life, they've known, us to be at war. But when Mogadishu happened and when I joined the military, most of the people that were joining to get college money. And they're, going to use the GI Bill, serve 4 years, do some sort of, job, whatever it might be, and then get out and go to college. That was really the majority of the people that, I was with. When you look at things like, as an example, every Hollywood movie that you see nowadays, everybody's got a radio and they're talking, they've got stuff overhead that's watching the battlefield, and they have great situational awareness and all those types of things. And we didn't have any of that. And, we didn't even know at the time to even plan for what if we're so engaged that we can't even have communication in the street because the volume of fire is so deafening that we can't verbally communicate. And how do we disseminate information to our subordinates in the middle of all that? And you can't just, hey, leaders huddle in the middle of the street and I'm going to put out information here. Like, it can't happen. And the point is we didn't even have the foresight to know, that we should have all of these contingencies in place, just as an example. So when I talk about Mogadishu and the things, that people ask me about it, I try and let them know things that maybe they wouldn't have picked up on, and definitely isn't discussed in the movie or the book or things like that. So
let's backtrack for a minute. Let's backtrack. I'm assuming you're a Long Island native.
No, I actually grew up north side of DC area.
Okay. So that's where you grew up.
Yep.
You joined the military what year?
In 1990, May of 1990.
May of 1990. Oh, wow. You look great for your age.
Yeah.
Good. No, that's awesome.
I joined at 21. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, good. No, that's great. So did you go to college?
I did a little bit of college, and I played music, pre-military. I played music, and that was kind of my whole thing. Since I was a little kid, I was in love with music. My earliest memories are sitting in the back of the car with no seatbelt on, making up songs and singing, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, got exposed to live music at a very young age, and my parents took me to a load of different outdoor concerts. And I loved it. That was really kind of what I wanted to be, and progressed with music until, I think I'm, 11 or 12 years old, and AC/DC Back in Black comes out, and man, you can't play that on the piano or the saxophone or the clarinet. So, I picked up a guitar and started plinking with that, and kind of, taught myself how to play. And then from there, it was like, well, I need a drummer. Like, I can't just do this myself. And probably first band at like 11 or 12 with, a neighborhood kid that was probably like 10 that had a drum set, and anyway, just kind of kept on with that. And I worked as a lifeguard, and I went to college as a classical guitar major. And I did that for just about a year. And, it started to not make sense because I'm playing music. Like, I can play out, I can do all that stuff. Why do I need to learn about it? I'm not going to be a music teacher. That's not what I wanted to do. So, and then at 18, once I registered for selective service, then the recruiters started calling and trying to recruit me into the Army band. And I was like, yo, dude, you don't play the kind of music that I like. So I don't see that happening. But there was and I'm just doing a lot of talking. And if you want to jump in, just
I don't know. Keep going.
wave your hand and stop me. But there was kind of a trifecta that happened in late 1989. And the first is the Rangers invaded Panama. And I saw some of that on the news, and it was that was like an exciting, spidey senses, tingling. And it was, man, that's a pretty cool thing. And the second thing was a buddy of mine who had joined the Air Force. This is the only person that I knew that was in the service. Nobody in my family was in the service, and no extended family in the service. He came home. He had gone to basic training in AIT in the Air Force, and he was home for Christmas vacation. It was the first time I'd seen him since he joined. And he says, at the end of basic training, these recruiters came around from a special unit, and they jump in behind enemy lines and they rescue down pilots. And I was like, man, that sounds pretty cool. So all these things are kind of happening at the same time. And the band that I was in just kind of deteriorated. And, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And it takes a long time to build a band and find the right people and the right, this guy and guy that doesn't have an attitude and this, all that stuff, this guy's schedule or whatever it might be. It takes a long time. And it had taken me about 3 years to kind of piece together the right group. And it was right about to kind of like go somewhere, and it just fell apart. So all those things kind of happened, culminating in December of 1989.
Okay, no, so now. Did you have family in the military or friends that were in the military already?
No, just the one guy
just the one guy, right?
He's the only person that I knew. So I was a complete idiot when it came to, even knowing what I was getting into. But I ultimately ended up, probably a few months later, I went to the Air Force recruiter and said, hey, I want to join this special unit that I heard about. And he's like, well, we can't really do that. Based on your ASVAB score, here are the jobs that you could do. And at the end of basic training, you can volunteer for that, but there's no guarantee. And I was like, I don't need a contract to guarantee anything other than giving me the chance to try. Mm-hmm. And given that I didn't really know anything about the military, it was more like, well, I don't want to be in the middle of basic training and get told that, hey, you're a good cook, dude. You're going to Alaska and flip burgers. I didn't know how it worked. So anyway, I went back and forth with the Air Force recruiter for the better part of a month, a little more, a little less, whatever. But I was leaving one day kind of frustrated, and the Army recruiter pulled me aside and he was like, hey man, what's going on? I see you here every week. What are you doing? And I said, I don't know. Like, the guy said he was going to give me a contract, but he's not, and blah, blah, blah. He says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be in Delta Force. And he was like, well, you can't just do that. You got to be something first, like Special Forces. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And he goes, well, you can't do that either. You got to be something before that, like a Ranger. And so that's literally where that started.
So you went from Ranger. See, I don't understand the whole breakdown. I'm a cop. I'm a detective. Sure. I don't understand the military. One of my closest friends, she's a military spouse, but I still never understand the way it works. Yeah. Maybe for some of the listeners, if you don't mind breaking it down really quick, because so you were in, if I'm understanding this correctly, you were in both the Army and the Air Force?
No. I was trying to get, into the Air Force initially. Air Force. Okay. And then the guy just fed me a line of shit, and I got to the point where the Army guy shot me straight, and I ended up joining the Army, not the Air Force.
Okay. Because, there are people that have done that before. They've been in different branches, right?
Yeah. Multiple services. Yeah. Okay. Definitely people. Not me, but. A
Ranger's very prestigious. You were a Ranger, no?
Yeah, I was a Ranger. But my goal was, the Ranger Regiment. There are some people that served their entire career there, and that's incredible. Mm-hmm. My goal kind of all along was to serve in a special mission unit, and that's where I wanted to be. So my goal was to use it as a stepping stone to kind of the next thing, to get, to the next thing. And I didn't even know what that process was like. When I explain it now, because I understand and have lived it and know, everything that goes into what it takes to get to kind of the tip of the spear of the military, and elite level military. I use the NFL as an analogy only because most people understand the NFL as pro sports, right? Mm-hmm. Or you could use the NBA, whatever you want to use. Delta Force is like the NFL, and you can't just join the NFL. You start as a little kid playing football, and you graduate to the point of playing high school Division A, high school ball, and maybe you get picked up by a college and get a scholarship, and then from there maybe you get drafted to the NFL. And then once you're in the NFL, you got to perform, or you're a nobody and you're gone. Mm-hmm. And the majority of the people that join the NFL, nobody hears about and nobody knows their names. They're there for a very short period of time and they're out. And the guys that perform and can stay around, they become superstars. So the military is basically the same thing. When you talk about like being at an elite level or in an elite unit, it took me 8 years of being in the Ranger Regiment before I could go to selection for Delta Force. And so it's not something that you can just go right into. There is no level of training. You have to live these things, learn these things, serve, understand how things work, understand how government contracting works, whatever it might be, but you need to be well versed.
Right. No, of course. And I want to throw this in there. Thank you so much for your service. You've done some incredible things. I know we're not going to get to all of them or even any of them maybe on the show, but people hear it in the inflection of your voice. And it's just, thank you. Thank you for your service.
It was my pleasure. And I think you probably feel the same way, but you get to a point where after a certain number of years, when you're done doing the thing that you're doing, you still don't feel like you've done enough, mm-hmm. And so people are like, oh, thank you. And I'm like, yeah, I only deployed 8 times, and I've got buddies that did like 16 deployments, and
wow,
you know what I mean? So it's like you never, and they probably feel like they didn't do enough, mm-hmm. Where does it stop? So, and that kind of feeds into, what I'm doing now and trying to give back to the community is really still trying to serve in a way, right? And help and support folks that need help and stuff like that. But, that's kind of how
you're doing that now through music, right?
Correct.
Which is pretty awesome. But I want to bring that up and I want to talk about that in length because I played instruments too. I could play Don't Stop Believing on piano and that's it. but I'll get to that in a second. I just want to bring up one thing really quick.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share my screen and then I'm going to show your website when we start talking about you as well. We started a campaign today and at Fund the First, just let me know when you see my screen. Can you see it?
There you go. Yep.
Okay.
See it.
All right, good. Because on my podcast last week, I accidentally wasn't paying attention and I'm sharing all my emails. So nice. I had to blur it all out. But anyway, so at Fund the First, we have a trusted crowdfunding platform for those who serve. And tragically, we also saw in the news what happened yesterday with 13 service members being killed.
Sure.
And it was absolutely horrible, but we're trying to do something to give back to them, give back to those families. All money raised is going directly to the families affected. We've already been in contact with the proper units that need to reach out to those families and get these funds. We started this today. We've raised $3,385 so far in a few hours since launching. We have a nice story here, but I just wanted to bring this up for anyone listening and watching as well, especially with having someone from the military on the show. We support you guys. We care. We're here. We're family. And I just want everyone to know that no matter what, we'll always be here to support you. Always.
That's awesome, man.
But so let's get to some music. So now you said you've been playing music your whole life, not almost your whole life. What was the first song that you learned how to play? And you didn't play guitar first, right?
Right. So I started, my parents took me to a Barry Manilow concert of all things, but that was my first. And most people don't understand that guy just so incredibly talented. He wrote all the medleys that you can think of, like the Dr. Pepper medley and, like A Good Neighbor, State Farm is there.
Did he really?
Oh yeah. So
I didn't know that. Wow.
yeah, there used to be a building in New York where all these songwriters sat in like cubicles and they just sat and wrote medleys and jingles for commercials. And that's actually where he got his start. And the guys that did really well there are probably, dozens and dozens of them, but that's kind of where they got their break. And so anyway, he became a performer, but he was the first concert I saw, and it was so stimulating that I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. And talked my parents into getting a piano, and they were like, well, we'll get a piano, but you've got to take lessons. And that's kind of where it started. So I think I was probably 5 or 6.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When I started with that. Prior to that, I would just make up limerick song. My dad would be screaming at some jackass in the Buick, and I'd be like, the jackass in the Buick, just start singing about stuff like that. And anyway, not to be like Forrest Gump or anything, but
there's nothing wrong with that though. That's great.
It was just kind of, things just clicked in my head. And, anyway, so that's kind of where it started. And then I think by the time I got into 4th grade, that's when school music program kind of kicked in. So I could play an instrument, or I could be in the chorus or whatever. And I chose to play an instrument. So I was playing the piano, but then also playing the clarinet.
Shut up.
I didn't want to play the clarinet.
I played the clarinet.
Oh, that's cool.
It's I never heard anybody say that they played the clarinet before. And for some odd reason, I said, I want to play the clarinet.
Okay. So. Yeah. I didn't want to play the clarinet. I wanted to play the saxophone.
I was like, I want to play the clarinet. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a great dance. I mean, it's basically the same as a saxophone. It operates the same way, same kind of fingerings and everything else. But so I played the clarinet for like a year until I could, get one of the saxophone slots. And then I played that for, I think, about 5 years. And I played in the school band, the pep band, my church orchestra, still taking, piano lessons and stuff like that. So like I mentioned before, at some point, the heavier music started to kind of suck me in, and you can't play that on those instruments. So we had an old acoustic guitar in my house. I think it may have been my sister's, and just started picking it up. So my ear was kind of trained and understood, notes and chords and how it all works together and everything else. But my hands didn't know what to do. So it was just a matter of like training my hands to, oh, okay, that's a chord. I can put these 3 notes together, and, and that's kind of where it happened. And that was in a time when there wasn't a YouTube, that you could rely on. I had to take the needle and drop it on the record, and then start playing something, and then have to try and drop it in the same spot. And,
Wait, how'd you tune your guitar?
How do you tune it?
Because when I tune, I use my phone now because it has digital tuner. But I have it. What type of tuner did you have to? I'm always curious. Did you tune by ear?
Yeah, I would tune by ear. And back then, I didn't have all this sophisticated stuff to, like now I've got all that shit, and I can look down and click on some stuff and tune up real quick. But back then I would tune to a record. Like I know this is the lowest note on the guitar, and he's playing that note. So if I can just tune it so that that's where I'm starting, then I can tune all the rest of the strings. So that's what I would do. And then at some point you kind of just get it in your head. And some people will have the ability to do that. They have like perfect pitch where you can say, I can hear a note and say, oh, that's a C, or that's a, G, or whatever it might be.
Right.
But I can hear those things in my head. I'll use songs like Man in the Box by Alice in Chains, because they don't tune. We basically use, the band that I'm in, we use the same tuning that Alice in Chains does. It's slightly down lower than normal tuning on a guitar. And I can hear that song in my head, and I know that's the note. So I know when I'm sharp or flat. But yeah,
I love music. It's just, especially when you feel the music, it's so much different. It definitely is different. Like
you ever watch the movie Serpico?
Of course.
I'm like talking with Serpico right now.
You should have seen when I was in narcotics, my hair. It was down to here. It was long, and my beard was thicker, so it was really it was really like Serpico.
Rocking the Frank Serpico.
Yep. But I'm trying to grow it back. I'm trying. We'll see. We'll see what happens in the next couple of months. But so what's the name of your band now? Why don't you introduce it? I'm going to bring up your website.
Sure. It's Silence and Light, and the website is silenceandlightmusic.com.
Here we go.
All right.
Go. So where did you come up with the name, or did you actually come up with the name, or was it a collaborative thing for Silence and Light?
It was a collaborative thing, but I think it's also cool to, I don't know if you can pull up like the band Instagram or things like that. That might be a
sure. Yeah. What is the at? Instagram.
Oh, okay.
I'll bring it up. I'm assuming it's Silence and Light.
Yeah, Silence and Light official.
I know I'm following you, but let's see if I can bring it up. Okay, here we go. Cool.
There you go. Yeah. So anyway, I think it's important to kind of talk about how the whole thing started, because that's really like our mission really was, we wanted to, I was looking for a way to give back to the community without asking people for money. And I didn't want to start a foundation. And I wanted to do something that, was meaningful to me. Mm-hmm. And so I approached a buddy of mine named Jason Everman, who is in both Nirvana and Soundgarden. Wow. Prior to joining the service in 1994. And Jason and I served in the Rangers together. And anyway, was going to meet him in the city to go see Mastodon. And Jason knew, I guess, Bill Kelleher from Mastodon, so we were going to go hang with them and see the show, et cetera. And I asked him, hey, man, you've been out of music for a long time. You were in it as deep as you could be in it. And if you don't want to be a part of this, that's cool. I get it. But I want to put together a band and I want to release music, and we'll take the proceeds of which and we'll give them to, different veteran and first responder related charitable organizations. So I stood up a social media page, which was this, and it just started to kind of grow organically. And next thing you know, we've got a full band and we're writing music, and even have a multi-Grammy award-winning producer, former veteran, involved too.
Wow.
And it just kind of continued to grow. So that's kind of how it started. And basically, we're tracking to release another album here in a couple months. So
that's incredible.
Yeah.
I definitely got to listen to some music, and I love the name. I think the name and your logo is pretty cool. I like it. I like that logo a lot.
Yeah, it's everything, everything has to start somewhere. And that's one of the things that has been the most challenging. Like, as an example, we got together and we started writing music. And when the producer got involved, it kind of forced there to be a timeline, because he only had a certain time that he could get us into the studio and we could record and do all that stuff. And anyway, it forced us to be done a whole lot faster than what we wanted to. And we didn't necessarily have the chance to finish the songs and polish them as much as we wanted to, with all the different layers and stuff like that you end up, using on a recording. So it was kind of a rush job. Like, we didn't even have a singer 4 months before we recorded the album. And that in itself, just figuring out melodies and harmony pieces and parts to songs and stuff like that without a singer is pretty impossible. So, it forced things to happen. We didn't want to delay the process, because I knew kind of going into it, we just need to get something out there. We have to at least be real and show people that we're doing what we say we're going to do, and there'll be more buy-in and people can understand the message and how we're trying to help and everything else. So anyway, that's kind of like up to, finishing the album, and then COVID hitting and kind of putting the kibosh on us doing anything fun and out and playing live. We've done a couple of shows. our first show was opening for Lenny Kravitz at a special benefit, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, now I got to ask, when we start hosting some events with Fund the First and with our nonprofit at the Fallen First Reserve, I know who to ask to come play.
There you go.
That'd be awesome. I mean, it would be an honor actually to be you and your team, with your band. You guys have, thank you. Again,
Yeah.
just thank you. Thank you for everything. But so I got to ask you something. With everything you've done in your career into the military and through music, would you do it all again? If you were to start over, would you do everything that you've done right now? Would you do it all again?
Yeah, I'm a kind of a no regret person,
Okay.
and I feel like there are people that are very good at planning and structuring their life. They know where they want to be in 10 years, and and I'm the kind of person that's a little more fly by the seat of my pants. And one of the things that does for me is it allows me to just kind of be in the day and just kind of focus on what I'm doing right now today. And life, as you know, is kind of a series of curveballs. When we're just on the glide path, and there aren't a whole lot of ups and downs. We're not really learning much about ourselves. We're not really growing. We're just kind of status quo. And it's always the ups and downs that, is where we grow the most. And I think that the downs are actually probably where we grow even more, but nobody likes those. Those aren't fun. And a lot of times there's pain associated with that, but I don't really have any regrets. I love that I was able to come back to music and kind of full circle it. And I was talking about this with somebody earlier today. I didn't have the depth as a kid, playing music. I would have been one of those assholes that ends up, going off the deep end with drugs and addiction and everything else. And just like, I had a great childhood. I had no trauma and just over enthusiastic about everything bad and fun to do. The wilder the better. Definitely partook in my share of illicit things and stuff like that, and it just, I don't know, I feel like the military and the whole what I lived through and a lot of the things that I've had to deal with and overcome in the military are what's given me some depth and kind of made me a more well-rounded person. But I think a song that I wrote in 1987 is going to be completely different than a song that I write now, based on some of my experiences and life lessons and everything else, right? So some people have the ability to do that at a very young age, and I certainly didn't. So, I like that I'm able to take negative experiences, dark experiences, whatever you want to call them, and channel them in a healthy, creative, and positive way through music. I think that's, really the benefit to me.
That's incredible. And I love how you say no regrets. You ever seen those tattoos, the no regrets, but they spell it wrong?
No regrets. They're always misspelled.
I get so nervous because I have tattoos. Like, this is my youngest son. I have my daughter's name, my oldest one. I have a lot of quotes on me also. And every time they're doing it, I'm freaking out. I'm like, please spell it right. Actually, I have a pretty cool quote. On my left arm, it says pain is temporary. And on my right, it says glory lasts forever. And
that's cool.
Yeah, but it's like I don't know if you can see it. It's like a skull kind of thing on this side.
Yeah.
And then on this one, it's like kind of a skull. But when they were doing this one, this is actually pretty recent, like only maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, I couldn't see it. And I got really freaked out over it. Really freaked out. so I almost regretted that one. But yeah, so no, that's great. I love that you.
I think we can look back at things and say, I wish I had done this differently, or I wish I had handled something differently. I think that's completely normal, but in terms of I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, when I get to a situation because I haven't overplanned my future or what's happening in 3 months or what's happening in 3 years, when a curveball presents itself, I'm able to see it clearly and swing and hit it. Right. And if I have this preconceived idea of where I want to be, and that same curveball comes, I'm going to answer whatever it is to try and get myself to that place that I said that I wanted to be. And I feel like I said, living in the day kind of allows you a little bit more of when things present themselves, you can make the best decision for what you have at the time, with the information you have at the time. I don't know.
I love that.
That's the way I do it.
Don't say, I don't know. I love that. That was great.
I'm late for everything. And,
you weren't late tonight. I actually messed up. I sent you the wrong link.
I was like, I'm screwed up again. So the first thing I did when I clicked the link, it said, this started at 9 p.m. And I was like, oh my God, I thought he said 10. It's like, yeah, idiot. I did it again.
So before we run out of time, I got 2 more questions I got to ask because it's the Heroes First podcast. So the first question is, and I'm sure I'm going to love your answer, but what does a hero mean to you?
Man, I got to see, first of all, I would never consider myself that. I feel like I was surrounded by greatness and surrounded by guys that were just giants, in terms of accomplishments and feats and things that they would do, and just amazed every time by the guys around me, Yeah, I don't even know if it's something you can put into words. I think about the guys that were running to the buildings on September 11th. And, obviously it's the big unknown. It's the same thing that, running to gunfire or running, yeah, it's an overwhelming thing. And it's something that you either have it in you or you don't. Mm-hmm. And not everybody has it in them, but it's to me, it's a word that's used way out of context now when we talk about pro sports players that are heroes and things like that. I don't want to shit talk anybody or go off a deep end on that, but I don't think that, other than then maybe contributing significant amounts of money to cancer research or something along those lines, maybe that's heroic. But playing a kid's game for money and entertainment isn't what I would consider to be a hero. So anyway, I look at law enforcement, I think of firemen, doctors, nurses, EMTs, and all the people that have been out there doing great stuff. I don't know. It's all of that.
Oh yeah, of course. Perfect answer. Thank you. Last question I'm going to have before we're going to call it a wraps for the show. Because I think that you and I can end up talking for the next 4 or 5 hours. So I like to keep the shows kind of short. Sure. But last question, and I want you to answer it with the first thing that pops into your head. So even if it's funny, who cares? Just spit it out. Sure. So if you were to have one superpower, what would it be?
Invisibility.
Why?
Just allow me to see things in a way that, it's almost voyeuristic, but not in a creepy way.
Okay.
But, I can sit and enjoy and look at something and not have people looking at me. I have this weird thing. My wife gets on me all the time. I wear sunglasses like all the time. And she's like, oh, you're being cool. Like now I finally had to tell her, these sunglasses for me are like my little shield, and I can hide behind them and people can't really see into me. Not that like they're using some sort of superpower, but it's like, you don't get to know me. You don't get to look into me and know what I'm about. Like, unless we're doing this or we're having a conversation or you're actually, but I wear sunglasses all the time for that reason. And so I think invisibility to me would be like, I don't have to be seen. I don't have to look a certain way. I don't have to act a certain way. I can just kind of be invisible.
I like that. It's different.
Yeah.
That's different. So Brad, before
that was your Pisces answer right there.
What's that?
That's the Pisces answer right there.
Okay. I don't think I should be a Pisces, but that's a whole other conversation.
So what would your superpower be?
Oh man, My superpower, I always wanted to fly.
Yeah.
I always wanted to fly. I have three superheroes, if you so to say, that I would always follow. It was Peter Pan, which I don't even know if he's a superhero if you really think about it. It was Superman, and then it's another one, Goku from Dragon Ball Z.
Okay.
So they all have flight, every single one of them. So it was just something that I always wanted to do, be able to fly and be able to go anywhere at any time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I was a little kid, I would have said fly immediately because,
Yeah.
and then I think after like being on so many planes and skydiving and doing all that stuff, kind of like I feel like I've done that. Not in the same way, but you're falling and there's gravity and death below if you don't do certain things. But yeah, that would be my number two.
Skydive. My brother had a really scary skydiving incident. Really scary. He cut off circulation. It was, yeah, really scary. But that's why I'll never do it.
Yeah. It's a completely different thing. People look at the military free fall, right? That's what they call it in the not skydiving, but they'll call it military free fall. And I think I've got, I don't know, 600-700 jumps like that. But
Wow.
you generally got a ton of shit strapped to you, weapon, backpack, all kinds of, weight and things like that. And you're generally jumping out high enough that you need an oxygen mask with a bailout bottle. So you're breathing oxygen while you're free falling. And you do that at night, from 25,000 feet, and it's a completely different animal. I mean, just absolutely completely different animal than skydiving,
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I can
That's
only
why I
imagine.
took the fun right out of that.
So Brad, how can people contact you? How can people visit your website? How can people find you on social media? I know we showed it, but maybe if you want to reiterate it once again.
Sure. So if people Google Silence and Light, they'll follow, or we own all of the first couple pages of Google, and you'll see links to interviews or music or things like that. So I think one of the things that's important to let people know is, we're contributing 100% of all of our music royalties to two different veteran and first responder related charitable organizations. And I could talk about those really quickly.
Sure.
And before I talk about those, I'll say that recording an album isn't easy or cheap. And, I basically fronted $35,000 to get the first album recorded and done. And that's considering travel and hotels and flights and equipment and, all different kinds of things, and rehearsal time and everything, studio time, mixing, mastering, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody gets a piece of the money. And, so we're not asking people to give us money. If you want to help the band recoup some of the costs, we've got merchandise for sale. And when the second album drops later this year, we'll have all new merchandise and different logo stuff and things like that. So if people want to help the band, they can buy merchandise. If people want to help give to charitable organizations, they can either buy music, which was, definitely more contribution in buying music than streaming music. So we didn't want to force anybody to have to buy anything. So it's on every streaming platform. If you want a physical CD, it's on Amazon. The two charitable organizations that we contribute to right now are, and one of them, we'll continue to support regardless, is called Warrior's Heart. And you can check out warriorsheart.org, but it's a physical place that's in Texas. I think that they're going to stand up a second facility, maybe northeast, something like that. They help get people that are struggling with PTSD. It could be a first responder, it could be a soldier, it doesn't matter. But they help them get cleaned up. And generally PTSD isn't just something that's, I'm having flashbacks like the way people see in the movies. It's usually wrapped up in substance abuse or alcohol abuse or things like that. So they help people get clean first. They do PTSD counseling, and then they use art, whatever form of art, as a form of therapy. And that's the part that I absolutely love. Is it could be music, it could be writing, it could be painting, sculpting, welding pieces of, whatever. I love that part of it. So we're contributing to them, and we're also contributing to Marine Raider Foundation. And they're directly, and because one of my bandmates is a former MARSOC guy. So he lost a ton of friends in a plane crash and other stuff like that that's happened. And basically they directly compensate families if they need to travel for a memorial service or pay for hotel rooms or things like that for fallen MARSOC Raiders. So those are the two that we're contributing to right now. I know that Warrior's Heart is going to stay regardless. And then we're talking with another charitable organization about kind of mutually, promoting one another and working together. So we'll see, but
it's incredible. Thank you. Brad, it was an absolute honor to have you on the show. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you're doing through music. And for all of our listeners, thank you for joining once again on the Heroes First podcast. And we'll see you all next time. Brad, thank you again.
Thanks for having me, dude.
All right. Take care.
All right.
You've been listening to the Heroes First podcast with Robert Garland. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, share, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, make sure to visit fundthefirst.com and follow us on social media at fundthefirst. See you next time.